Chapter 43. Totally just the sniffles. Summary. Dumps are really interesting places. You can find a lot there. It's the last day of weapons training. Well, the last day of their week off of work. They'd still be training after this, just more off and on. And Denki is bored. He had just finished his training almost half an hour ago and had since been wandering the dump. Mr. Yuntuk was just finishing up with Mina's extra knife-throwing lessons. Denki wasn't sure why her badass scythe thing wasn't enough, but she insisted it would be fun. A claim that had, in turn, roped Izuku into joining her. But that left the rest of them with nothing to do but wait. Denki's not sure what everyone else was doing, but he did know that as soon as Mei had turned her crazy inventor stare towards him, it was time to flee. And flee he did. He was so far in the dump at this point, he couldn't see the others. He could hear the occasional excited shout, but other than that, he was alone. It was nice to get away every once in a while. While some days, the thought of being alone was almost physically painful, other days he just needed a little time to himself. So he wouldn't mind wandering the trash heaps if it weren't so boring. His idea of a good time alone was more listening to music and playing video games, less wandering trash piles. To try and keep himself somewhat entertained, Denki was on the lookout for anything interesting in the trash heaps. Since Mina, Katsuki, and Ochako had decided the ship was in need of decorations, he figured it wasn't too bad of an idea to be on the lookout. He was about to round another tower of trash when he spotted something. There, lying in the piles of metal scraps and other such junk, was a fancy-looking briefcase. Not exactly something for the ship, but interesting nonetheless. Carefully as he could, Denki reached over to grab the still pristine handle. The case itself was sleek and metal. It was almost industrial-like. Surprisingly enough, the case was completely unrusted. Denki settled himself in the case in a cleared pathway. The latches opened with a hiss, and the smell hit him before he'd even fully opened the case. It smelled kind of like your mouth tastes when you wake up in the morning and you forgot to brush your teeth the night before. He felt himself gag. Whatever was in the case was not worth it. He briefly caught a glimpse of broken vials before he slammed it shut. After latching it tightly, Denki threw the case back where it came from and continued on his walk. Gross. Hey, Katsuki, Ayalin called out. Katsuki let out a grunt in response, as he was in the middle of grabbing some spices to bring back home. A week without going to work had left their supplies at Camp barren. The other teens had headed back already, and he was just picking up a few things before leaving himself. Pyerpa and Fastel were staying over at a friend's place in celebration of completing their self-defense classes with the old man, which was good. They needed kids their age to hang out with. I just got a message from your friends. Apparently, Denki is sick. Fucking dunce face. Ayalin walked over, tablet in hand, with a video call open. Katsuki could see Denki lying in Mina's lap. Ochako was holding the tablet up, and began talking once he came into view. Oh, hey, Katsuki. On the way home, Denki started complaining about feeling sick. Right now, it looks like a cold, she said. Ochako was gearing up to say more when Katsuki butted in. We're not on fucking Earth. This could be serious. Mina gave him a look. That's why we called Ayalin. The Rocky Sentient sighed. You lot can use my medical scanner just to be safe, but you have to be very careful with it. It's quite expensive. I've only got one because of my Dehuskai health condition. Thanks so much, Ochako chirps out. Don't worry about your scanner. We'll be careful. Katsuki huffs. Izuku was a little anxious when Kachan finally got back. Sure, Denki seemed okay, but they were in space. Pathogens specialized to infect specific hosts, and when they infected something they aren't expecting, the results can be deadly. A normally harmless illness can turn into the next globe-spanning plague. Now, that's just what Izuku knows from Earth, but it doesn't bode well for them. Currently, he's trying not to spiral. He had to keep reminding himself that they had the scanner, and things seem to be okay for now. "So, how does this crap work?" Kacchan questioned. Mei was quick to snatch up the device from Katsuki to inspect. It kind of looked like a grocery scanner from back on Earth. Even more so when she pointed it at Denki, and a beam of red light came out. After a few seconds, its screen flashes blue and an alarming buzzing sounds. Kacchan tried to look over Mei's shoulder as she read, but it was no use. Mei was technically the only one of the Terrans who could read Basic. The rest of them had picked up some things from their work, but she was the only one to sit down and learn the written language. Izuku felt his stomach tighten as Mei read the information on the scanner. Her face got paler and paler as she continued, until she finally reached the end. Then, she let out a chuckle. "What?" Denki questioned. "What is it? Am I gonna be okay? Is my skin gonna fall off or something?" The pink-haired gremlin just grinned. "You're gonna be fine." The group collectively let out a sigh of relief. Everything was going to be fine. They got lucky this time. Or maybe they didn't. Maybe this was like the food, where they were strangely resistant to most harmful things. But Izuku couldn't be sure. They all couldn't be sure. They didn't know much about alien illnesses as they should. After this, they are definitely going to have to take a deeper look into the threats out there. "It's contagious, so the rest of us will catch it at some point, but it's nothing serious for us. We will have to call off work for another week, and the siblings will have to stay at their friends' or islands until the virus is out of our systems." Katsuki scoffed at her. "We don't need to take fucking time off work. If it's not that big a deal, it's not a big deal if some other people get sick." Mei shook her head. "I said it wasn't a big deal for us. We're going to need to strictly quarantine ourselves fully before we can even get close to seeing other people. While for us, it's like the flu. For basically any other sentient, it's bad. Like, really bad. Denki, I just want to know, how did you manage to get infected with the space version of the Black Death? First the Roombas and now this." Denki leveled Mei a harsh glare, as he should. "We agreed never to speak of that again." Izuku nodded his head solemnly, as the other three just looked confused. Then, what Mei said seemed to sink in. "What do you mean he has the Black Death?" Ochako exclaimed. Before the rest of them could further panic, Mei sighed and butted in. "Like I said, it's harmless to us. Basically the flu. But yeah, this is a deadly space plague that hasn't had a case in this galaxy in a long time. So again, I ask, Denki, how did you get a space plague?" Well, it might have had something to do with this weird briefcase thing I found in the dump earlier today. It was like sealed, and when I got it open, it smelled horrible, so I closed it right away and put it back. But it might have had a few weird broken vials in it. Katsuki hit Denki on the back of the head. "You idiot! How did you even manage something like that? What kind of bioterrorist or whatever leaves that kind of thing in a dump? Because that's the only source it could have come from, as stupid as it sounds." Denki pouted. "I don't know. I was just walking around at the end of practice and found it. But wait, if I'm sick, does that mean Mr. Zyuntuk's sick?" "Did you see him after you found the briefcase?" Izuku questioned anxiously. Denki thought for a moment. "No, I didn't. He was already inside by the time I got back." Another collective sigh of relief sounded. Izuku didn't know what he would do if Mr. Zyuntuk got sick because of them. He'd helped them so much. Izuku couldn't let anything happen to him. And thank the gods, Pyurpa and Fastel were with friends instead of at camp. It sounds like the pathogen travels through the air, so if they'd been around Danky while he was coughing. But it was okay. They weren't here. They were safe. Now, all the Terrans could do was isolate themselves and let the virus run its course. The flu wasn't that bad. They could take care of each other until it was over. As long as they were together, it would be okay.